Look out, y'all. It's your boy Ash talking some boxing. Was able to tear myself away for a little while. Got my little yak. Uh, 13 was a pretty good year. A lot of fights. Good fights happened. Could have been more. Too much of boxing, the business, that took over more so than the boxing, the sport. They just don't do it like they used to. You know, in a way, I kind of wish that fighters of today were like fighters of, like the 50s and 40s. That's probably the greatest era of in history. It's arguable. I'm pretty sure there are other people that are, want to chime in on that, challenge that. 80s were pretty good. Actually, there was a lot of very, very good eras of boxing. Man, I don't even know the title of this thing. You got people saying, throwing around terms like the greatest of all time, and I'm not even going along color lines. Okay, it's not just African Americans that are saying that Floyd Mayweather is the greatest of all time. No, not at all. And for blood, I know I didn't get a chance to say it on your video, but no, Floyd has never been in my top 10 all-time great. I usually don't even compile the all-time great list, and over the years I've learned to stop doing pound for pounds because it's just meaningless garbage. When you know who the best fighters in the world are, you just know. You know what I'm saying? You just know. I'm gonna leave all that for the media. Sugar Ray Robinson still tops the charts. Y'all guys gotta understand, man. There's too many things to consider. Look at the era. Late 30s, 40s, 50s, stuff like that. Dude fought. I know I hear people saying that he ducked Charlie Burley, but I don't know. I can rival that claim. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I wasn't. None of us were probably alive at that time, so we can all go off of the usual dribble and conjecture that's out there. But when you really think about it, Charlie Burley, the great fighter that he was, he was a more established pro by the time Ray Robinson came out of the amateurs and turned pro. Of course, when he turned pro, he started ripping off victories out of out the wazoo. You know what I'm saying? Everybody saw the attributes: hand speed, one punch power off the back foot, one punch power backing up. Of course, one punch power going forward. If you were lucky enough just to get one punch from him when fighting him. But you got to think about the times too. It was the era where boxing wasn't really favorable to the black fighter. The theory is that blacks would have taken over all the divisions and all the championships if they were allowed to compete as freely and as often and against all the white champions in every division. So they were very selective with who they allowed through. The guys that they did allow through were, I guess you could say, they were the cream of the crop. But it just so happens it was one hefty crop. And in that hefty crop, you would have to say Charlie Burley was a part of that. And the rankings, when you think about the rankings, he was always several steps behind Ray Robinson. When you think about it, you had, the what did they call it? The Black Murderers Row, which were probably in the 40s, the most avoided black fighters of the time. You had Charlie Burley, of course. In fact, he probably emerged out of all of them as the best of those, but all of them were equally great. And of course, they couldn't fight any of the top white fighters or the top white champions, so they had to face each other, which was par for the course for that time. The black fighters were usually matched much harder. They usually had to fight in other guys' backyards, travel, short notice fights. At that time, short notice fights really didn't mean anything. Everybody was in tip top shape anyway. Uh, and of course, they weren't paid shit. So, as we all know, like guys like Archie Moore didn't make no money. He fought for crumbs for the better part of his whole career, and he was among the guys that were in the Black Murderers Row, along with guys like Holman Williams, Coco Kid, Jimmy Bivens, who would have a freakish growth spurt. I don't know, can't even talk. A freakish growth spurt. He would eventually campaign at light heavyweight, like Archie Moore eventually did as well. You had some Texas guys like Aaron Tiger Wade. You had another Texas guy, Eddie Black Dynamite Booker. A lot of guys that made up the Murderers Row. Of course, you had Jack Chase. Just many other. And you know what? As the establishment allowed Sugar Ray Robinson to enter into the mix of the establishment. And what I mean by that is the more lucrative fights in boxing didn't happen if it was two blacks fighting each other. Of course, you would have that, but they would have to be the cream of the crop for it to actually be lucrative. Usually the most money being accrued off of fights happened when it was two whites fighting or a black and a white, and the theory was that if it's a black champion, the title is not going to go from a black hand to a black hand. It'll go from a black hand to a white hand. And if it were to go from a white hand to a black hand, then they wanted the black champion to fight all the best white fighters. So if there was a change in titles, change in hands, it'll go back to the white fighter. And that's another reason why guys like Charlie Burley and Sugar Ray Robinson didn't fight. And on top of all that, those guys, Archie Moore, Jimmy Bivens, Jack Chase, all those guys, they were really naturally bigger than Ray Robinson. He started among like a shade over lightweight. And when you think about it, I guess that made it reasonable for him to fight a guy like Sam Angot. And going into the Angot fight, I guess the winner was promised a shot at the welterweight title. I could be wrong, you know me. My dates can be messed up. But if you know Sam Angot, he was the guy to give Willie Pep his first loss. Willie Pep would go, like 60 straight wins before he lost. And when he lost to Angot. Willie Pep being most famously known for his battles with Sandy Sadler. Of course, Ray Robinson beat Sam Angot, and he did eventually get a shot at a vacant title. I forget the champion's name, but the champion would eventually retire, and Ray Robinson would finally get his shot at the welterweight crown, which is astonishing because guys that he beat got a shot at the title before him. So I guess the term ducking would apply in these times. I guess you got champions like Tony Zell. He didn't fight Charlie Burley. He didn't fight all those guys. I think Rocky Graziano. He fought. Of course, he fought Ray Robinson and lost. I think he got stopped in like 3 rounds. But he was a great champion. He most famously known for his fights with Tony Zell, champion Tony Zell. And anyway, Black Murderers Row. They fought each other. Archie Moore traveling town to town trying to find fights. This is actually when he was campaigning at middleweight. We haven't even gotten to his light heavyweight stint because he's among the best light heavies to ever campaign. And when you have a great fighter like that, those great fighters always have a kryptonite. When you look at Ali, he couldn't do nothing with Norton. Moving to a more recent era, like D-Style said earlier, Barrera, he couldn't beat Junior Jones, who was a very good puncher. Shane couldn't beat Vernon Forrest. De La Hoya couldn't beat Shane. Archie Moore couldn't beat Ezra Charles. Ezra Charles would dominate him every time out. So it just really depends. It didn't stop him from achieving greatness. He just could not beat Ezra Charles for whatever reason. And Ezra Charles were among those black fighters that weren't getting the stardom that he wanted. He couldn't get the fights that he wanted. And, he was among those guys that were competing around the middleweight limit. There was no super middleweight limit, if I'm not mistaken. Matter of fact, I know it wasn't a super middleweight limit. If you didn't fight in middleweight, you went up and you fought in a light heavyweight. Possibly underweight, like when Archie Moore fought Jimmy Bivens, like I said before. He must have gave up almost 20 pounds and got dominated in that fight. But like I said, man, they just don't make fights the way they used to. Champions, not the same. These guys are prima donnas in today's game. You gotta make the most money you can. I understand that, but these guys take being privileged to the third power. You know what I'm saying? It ain't the same, man. It ain't the same game. It really ain't the same game. Of course, I'm just rambling, man. I'm over here drinking. I don't know. It's getting uploaded though. I don't give a damn. Just kind of running my mouth. But as far as being the best ever, first of all, it's too many eras to consider. Too many fantastic fighters to consider. Too many great champions. Champions with resumes that trump Floyd several times over. Being undefeated really is not that important when you think about the quality of opposition these guys have fought time and time out. They're not taking months off, sometimes taking days off, right back in the ring, a week or two off, right back in the ring against another top guy. Henry Armstrong, oh God, he was infamous for it. The way he fought damn near every time out, you would think he didn't fight just a week ago. You know what I'm saying? Because he brought it every time out. And that's why guys like that would, he was known for being a lineal champion at featherweight, then welterweight, and then eventually lightweight. Now that is unprecedented. And he's probably known as one of the greatest welters of all time. And that's really astonishing considering the fact that he really wasn't just this huge guy. You saw that. Well, you probably didn't see it, but Sugar Ray Robinson would beat him, like I said, guys Sugar Ray Robinson would be champion, like Zivik. I want to call him Frankie Zivik, but I know that's not his name. Anyway, Zivik is a white fighter, man. When I talk about, when we say that the white champions and the white fighters wouldn't fight blacks, obviously we're not talking about 100% of them. That's not true, because Zivik was white and he fought some straight murderers. He fought some straight killers, beat some, lost to some. So it ain't all across the board. Just like in anything negative that ever happened in the U.S., including, that had anything to do with race, it was never 100%. You know what I'm saying? There were always those few that was like, nah, I'm not feeling that. You know, I'm gonna be on the other side. And no, it don't mean I hate my own kind. I just recognize right from wrong. And Zivik was one of those ones. I mean, he was a real fighter. He was like, you know what? I don't care if a guy is not my color. I'm a fighter. You know, I'm gonna fight everybody. You got Billy Suits. He was another one. You know, he got beat by Charlie Burley, but he went on and fought for a title. So you know, and won too. So there was a lot of guys like that as well. Ken Overland, uh, I don't know, just a bunch of really solid fighters in that time, man. There was a lot of great fighters in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't know what the hell we watching in today's game, man. I mean, I'm proud to have it, you know, but these guys are prima donnas, man. If they had half the heart of the guys of yesterday, what type of sport would we have? You know what I'm saying? And that's why I was like, when you say the best ever, Floyd, I'm sorry, man. You are a very talented guy. Of course, you're the best ever in terms of being a businessman and maximizing your the amount of money you can make while doing what you do. And in terms of being the best among every era, every fighter that comes into the game, not at all. You don't even make top 25. Go ahead and thumb the videos down because I know y'all haters y'all know you don't want to hear that. I know you ain't want to hear that. And for those that were talking about how Adrian Broner was great, come on, man. Greatest of all time. He ain't even the greatest in Cincinnati. Oh, man. Chicago getting beat. Nick Foles is a beast. Vic has gone after this year. I bet that. But anyway, man, I'm gonna bring some closure to this video, man. If you want to chime in on it, it's wide open, man. I know I ain't as thorough right now as I normally would be. Just sitting here rambling, just trying to get some dialogue going. But holla back, it's your boy Ash. Deuce.